metalheads in general and metal artists really like when a writer made an entire universe, you know. And I think it's for that some band was inspired by the Tolkien, you know, Lord of the Rings. And with Lovecraft, there is something entire, especially with the Cthulhu mythos, of course, with all the entities, with the cosmogony of Lovecraft. And I think for that, I think metalheads are little geek people, you know. But I'm like that, I'm not a problem to be a little geek. Huh?
Greetings, Legion. Welcome to episode 276 of Into the Necrosphere. Joining me this week, the great Benjamin Guerry of the band The Great Old Ones out of France. Benjamin is the guitarist and vocalist for the band. He's a founding member, the sole original member since 2009. And for those of you guys that caught The Great Old Ones at Fortress 2025, you know that they absolutely blew the roof off of the Scarborough Spa. I managed to catch up with Benjamin face to face about 2 hours or so before they took to the stage. We spoke for an hour or so about the Great Old Ones' music, particularly their new album Kadath, which has been really well received both by members of the Legion and by the scene at large. We got into a discussion around our philosophies on what it takes to be a good frontman. Lots to talk about there. Just generally a very talkative, very friendly, very affable young man, and it was great to catch up with him. You guys are going to thoroughly enjoy that conversation, and it will be coming your way very shortly. But before we get to that, to get your engines revved up for another episode of Into the Necrosphere, we got us some unsanctioned filth. This week we travel to New Jersey by way of Australia to check out Warhammer 666. Warhammer 666 is a solo black metal project, just put out a new EP called Never Stop Burning. And for your listening pleasure, this is a track off that release called Dead Priest. Dead Priest by Warhammer 666, setting the tone for episode 276 of Into the Necrosphere. You can check out every single Warhammer 666 track by heading to their Bandcamp, link as always in the description to the podcast. And if you like what you hear, buy yourself some music and let him know who it was who sent you. A reminder as well, if you are new to the podcast and maybe you've scraped together your last bit of savings, blown it all on studio time, pull together that one great track and you're desperate for somebody to hear it, so long as obviously it's not fucking wimp shit, send it to intothenecrosphere@gmail.com or drop me a line on Instagram, Facebook or X. If I like what I hear, I will feature it on the Unsanctioned Filth segment of the podcast, and who knows what fame and fortune awaits you once you have attained perhaps one of the very highest honors in all of the underground. Also, if you're new to the podcast, I should remind you that I am a card-carrying member of the Horsemen of the Podcasting Apocalypse, a collective of content creators dedicated to crushing mediocrity from Monday to Sunday, wherever we find it. We start on a Monday with Brandon Legion as he brings you another episode of Horrorwolf 666. On a Tuesday, there's yours truly, casting hexes and slaying posers right here on Into the Necrosphere. I am also, for the next 2 weeks, going to be putting out episodes every Friday. This coming Friday, I've got Brandon Hater of Obsidian Tongue, so make sure you keep an eye out for that one. And then next week, I've got the mighty Matt McGeachy of Cryptopsy. The new Cryptopsy album is almost out, should be out actually as I'm recording this coming Friday. So only appropriate that I release that conversation to line in with the release of the record. This was the second time that I've had him on the podcast, and definitely the most enjoyable time. I think a lot of those initial anxieties, those, that social awkwardness that you have when you speak to somebody for the first time, that was gone. You may have had a few liquid libations as well, but really had a fun time talking to him. So make sure you check that one out next week, Tuesday. And then a reminder, if you're going to be in Bergen, Norway for Beyond the Gates in July, I'm going to be there as well. So keep your eyes peeled, and hopefully we get to shake hands, have a few beverages together, shoot the breeze, and have us a good time as we take in some of the bands and some of the sites. Moving on with the Horsemen of the Podcasting Apocalypse scheduling. On a Wednesday, we got your first double shot of the week. We've got Everything Went Black, hosted by the great Mike Hill. Once again, congratulations to him and his lovely new wife, Tina. They got married over the weekend. He looked very debonair in his suit, but when he takes to the stage as the frontman for the absolutely incredible Tombs, he looks less immaculate and more fucking barbaric. New Tombs album, by the way, coming out later this year, so make sure you keep your ears peeled for that. And then on a Wednesday as well, by the way, we have Iblis Manifestations, hosted by the Middle Eastern marauder, my brother from another mother, Cheyenne from the band Trivax. New Trivax album, The Great Satan, should already be on your rotation at least on a daily basis, if not hourly. On a Thursday, we've got your second double shot of the week, Necromaniacs, featuring a returning Mike Hill, who is joined by his regular co-hosts, the Outlaw Mike Scandado and the Professor Jeff Kashid, reviewing new and old horror movies to make for one of my favorite podcasts of the week, one I never ever miss. We also have on a Thursday the first installment of 2 that come your way every week of Soul Knox, hosted by the sinister minister Carl Haikara. He takes you on the second leg of his journey through the dark, the weird, the arcane, and the esoteric on a Sunday. So that is the Horsemen of the Podcasting Apocalypse lineup. Make sure you're following us on the socials. Make sure you subscribe to us. I suggest that if the spirit moves you to do so, leave us 5-star reviews and all of those good things, as many of you have already done. Also, make sure that you stick around after my conversation with Benjamin, because it's news rant time. This week, we are listening to new tracks by Lord Belial, Abigail Williams, Biohazard. We lift the lid off the mystery of a new black metal sensation who calls himself Drogvale. I share some pretty, should I say, concerning insights about My Dying Bride. Of course, we spoke about My Dying Bride last week. A member of the Legion has shared some information with me that I needed to share with you. public information, but information that's not necessarily being publicized, that I think sheds some light on whether or not the band is going to continue with Aaron Stainthorpe or not in the future. So I'll talk about all of that and more in the news rant later on. Right now, though, my friends, sit back and enjoy as I welcome to Into the Necrosphere for the very first time, Benjamin Guerry of the Great Old Ones. One word of caution, not caution really, but just to mention, we had a couple of interruptions over the course of this conversation, so if you hear things feeling a little bit broken in terms of the flow of the conversation, that's why. We were sitting backstage, there's people coming in and out. Might hear a bit of background noise as well. You might also, much to her chagrin, see my wife reflected in the mirror behind us. But either way, I know that you guys are going to enjoy this conversation as much as I did having it, so let's get to it.
Clean a little the background.
Get the
well, if you are pillars or something like that.
Get nice. the pools of goat's blood locked up just before you start talking. My friend, I know you don't have a drink on you. Is that your?
Yeah, it's my beer.
Well, cheers to you.
Cheers.
On a great album.
Thank you.
An album that, as I said on the news rant, when I heard the first single, I was like, wow. This is the Great Old Ones absolutely back firing on all cylinders.
Oh, nice. Thank you.
Just kind of helping me set the background, the context to how this new record has turned out the way that it has. What were your thoughts on the response that you had to Cosmoticism?
It was nice. It was the response was very nice. We unfortunately, as you know, there is all the pandemic thing, so we just had the time to make one French tour, one French tour after the album, but I think it was very nice because all the times people don't know what they can expect about us and from us. So Cosmos was a little different in terms of production, and it was not a concept album like all the other albums. It was different. There is a concept, but not a direct story about Lovecraft story. But the response was very nice. Show was very nice too, and but in the end, the only thing is the fucking pandemic thing, because we had a lot of great tour organized and all finished about that. Normally we announced I think. Some months after the release of the album, we announced a tour with Ultimas, and with the pandemic, they tried to delay the tour, and after that, just cancelled. And sometimes I little, I think it's a shame.
That's a shame too, because Ultimas would have been such a great band to go and play with.
Exactly.
You've got the pedigree in that band. But it's a nice. I think it's a quite good partnership as well. You know, it's a nice bill for fans to see. You know, more kind of progressive black metal, and then them.
It's very particular with a lot of identity. And for us, of course, it's an all-star band. So it's as a fan, it would be great, but unfortunately, like a lot of people, a lot of projects. Fell down with the pandemic thing. So,
remind me, with Cosmoticism, that album was released right before the pandemic kicked off, so you were kind of in that unfortunate wave of bands that had put out something and then had plans and everything just got derailed.
I think it's 3 months before the total pandemic thing, so 3 months or 7, I don't remember, but in the end, we were a little lucky because we had the time to make one tour in France. And some bands, some friends just released sometimes 1 month before the pandemic, so nothing after that. So I think it's a shame, but we were in a certain thing lucky because we had the time to make just one tour. Maybe it was a very great tour with new songs, very well received by the people. So. It's like that. It's past now.
Yeah. So going into this album now with Cosmoticism, one thing I did want to point out, I've been a fan of this band since early days.
Okay.
I do think Cosmoticism was different in a way that I think threw a lot of people's expectations a little bit. And I do know if I look at reviews and things like that, it was the first time that I'd seen the band get real criticism from some quarters, which is inevitable if you're going to do something different. Like the previous records were so just unanimously embraced. One of the main creative forces in the band, as you're kind of thinking about the new album, does any of that criticism play on your mind? Like, how do you, if you get negative feedback for the band, how does that impact you as a writer? Is it something that you ever consider? Is it something that you take to heart? How do you process it?
Sometimes yes, not all the time, because if I just take a look about criticism, I will not free. So I want to be free to create what I want to create. What the band want to create. But sometimes I just not criticism, but so ideas. Sometimes I read something and say, oh yes, it could be a good idea for the next album. Sometimes, but with the reviews, it's always the same, because so when EOD, the third album was released, but some people say, oh, it's less atmospheric, so I prefer when the greater one is more atmospheric. So you can make everybody happy.
Up to that point was my favorite.
Yeah. Okay, but some people prefer Tekelili, because it's more atmospheric. Me, I really want to create some songs that I really want to play live. It's important to me that music are efficient and beautiful when you listen with your ears, but and alone. But maybe it's because I'm getting older, but I really want to compose music when I was pleased to play live.
Mm-hmm. How old are you now? How old are you now?
I'm 42 years old.
42, okay. Yeah. So you're 3 years younger than me. So the live component is something that is extremely important to you.
Yeah.
Where did your love affair with live music, with the live experience begin? What was the first concert you ever went to see?
To see me? Wow. I'm not sure I can remember. It was, I think it. I'm not sure, but it's a French band, the first. Not metal, you ask, in general.
It can be anything. Yeah.
Anything. But the first one I saw when I was young was, I think, a French band called Powo. It was a band who make all the instruments with a voice,
Okay.
Something like that. And after that, some rock band from France. And I think the first, I try to remember the first metal show, because I think it was very, very important to me. Certainly a band from my city, from Bordeaux, but I don't remember what band it was. But if I can share a true experience about something very, very special, it was later. I think I was something like 24 years old or something like that. The first time I came to Hellfest Festival in France.
Okay.
At the beginning, I think it was the second or third edition of the festival, so not biggest like now, with just 2 stages, and I think I saw 42 gigs in 2 or 3 days, something like that, because in Bordeaux at this time there was not a lot of gigs of famous bands came in Bordeaux, so I think I saw Opeth, Mastodon, Dimmu Borgir, Cradle of Filth, and all the time on the stage, and 42 shows. It was one of my best weekends in my life, because after that I returned a lot of time at Hellfest, but with no discovery, so it's different. But this time I was, wow, I can see all the band I dreamed to see, so it was very particular, I think.
Yeah, it's My first ever live experience that left a lasting impression on me was a band out of the Czech Republic called Kadath. I don't know whether you remember them.
No.
Like brutal death metal.
Okay.
And I remember just being completely and utterly mesmerized by that. And then obviously when I moved to the UK out of South Africa, then you get to experience a lot of different things. But I've always been, I think it's because I grew up with in the Metallica in the prime school of live shows, that audience engagement, yelling at the crowd, the energy that give and take from band to crowd and back again. I've just always been in love with that, and that's part of why I love going to shows so much, especially when bands get it right. So when you think about who inspires you, and as you think about the Great Old Ones live experience, who are the bands or the musicians that you really look up to and you go like they absolutely nail it?
I'm a true fan, to be totally honest. I think it's my teenager band of Metallica,
Yeah.
And Metallica, it's my... I have the impression to know the guys, when I was a teenager, I listened all the time. I watched all the video, 1 year and a half with Metallica, about the Black Album and all that thing.
Yeah.
And so... It's not in live because I saw first on video, of course, but when I saw that, wow,
Same, yeah.
It was the time when Metallica was angry, so there is something very angry, not scary, just angry, and I think this anger very touched me at this time. And after I saw them at a lot of years after, during the anniversary of the Black Album, the tour at the Stade de France in Paris. And it was fantastic because it was the first time I saw my idols, so it was particular. But what I saw in live who really... the first time I saw Emperor was very particular to me because I think in black metal it's my all-time favorite band, Emperor. So the first time was late too, but it was something special. So but in terms of really presence, I don't know. I saw so many gigs. Sometimes I just remember, but when I was young, what I saw. Now it's difficult to say.
Well, I mean, you had me at Metallica because I love and hate Metallica in equal measure on this podcast, but I will always be... There's always going to be a part of me that's going to be the kid that saw Binge and Purge for the first time. And to this day, that is the standard. As a frontman, as performers across the 4 members of the band, the way that they just effortlessly go from song to song in a way that makes you feel like, it's almost certainly been discussed, but in a way that it feels like it's completely spontaneous. I just love that. Like on Binge and Purge, I was going to ask you actually, the first, you mentioned like seeing the video for the first time. Was it Binge and Purge that you saw?
No, I think in 1 year and a half in the life of Metallica. So you have the first one in studio with Black Album, and the second tape was just live, the tour. After that, I remember the video of Harvester of Sorrow in Russia, in the festival in Russia was wow. And sometimes, to be honest, I watch again just this live of Harvester of Sorrow because there is something very angry, in the crowd with all that military, it was very particular. And Metallica, at this time, I'm really like it's about the guys, even if sometimes Lars Ulrich is just okay, it's another thing. I really like James Hetfield. For me, James Hetfield is the true frontman, the real frontman.
In my view, the best in that era. Now, not so much, but in that era, the best frontman. Yeah,
it's true. And but musically, there was something special to me because I really liked all the band or the thrash band, Slayer or something like that. But in Metallica, there is this lyrical thing, with the guitar influenced by the classical music, especially with at the time of Cliff Burton. And so this anger, this classical music influence was the perfect mix, and in live you can have the anger more, so No, I think sometimes my bandmates, I'm sure my bandmates want to say to me, stop speaking about Metallica, please stop.
Oh no, dude, I can talk about it forever. And you know, you mentioned the Monsters of Rock show. You have Metallica there, and you also had Pantera and their absolute peak. Like, you know, just the beginning of Domination with Anselmo standing there and yelling at the crowd, and he's like, "This is a lesson in hardcore from the Lone Star State," and the crowd is like, "Ah."
I mean, Pantera was fantastic. It's different from Metallica. There is less this lyrical, classical influence, of course, but it's more brutal, you know.
Influenced by steak.
Yeah, it's true. And
influenced
whiskey.
by red meat and booze.
It's true.
I wanted to ask you about the French black metal scene. I had an interesting conversation with Joan of the band Jade, and we were talking about the Spanish scene and how many great bands there's been in that scene, but never a flagship band, and never a band that the other musicians, the young up-and-coming musicians in the band had to have as kind of their steer, their true north, or their role models. In Greece, you had Septic Flesh and Rotting Christ. In Portugal, you had Moonspell. As an outside observer, in France, you had Deathspell Omega and Blue Douse Nord.
Yeah.
As somebody who was coming into that scene,
if you speak about just extreme metal scene and black metal, yes, we have Gojira, and I think
that's true.
Gojira, I think it's the biggest European band, you know. So it's not black metal or death metal. Death metal, at the beginning.
Well, they started.
It's true, but I think it's the biggest band of Europe now. They are American now. But about black metal, well, Deathspell Omega it's special because Deathspell Omega don't make live shows, so it's different. But when you listen about and when you read interviews with Nergal from Behemoth, with Michael from Opeth, they know Deathspell Omega, so it's very famous band. Blue Douse Nord is a very nice band too, and very famous, but they don't make gigs too. You know, very particular in France. There is something about that. The most famous black metal band don't make shows.
Yeah, no shows, no public profile.
Deathspell Omega, no interviews. Blue Douse Nord make Vince Dahl make some interview, but in general, no. It's particular. But now what you have. You have in death metal you have Loud Blast, but it's old now. In black metal, I think there are a lot of good bands, of great bands, but all at the same level. You know, I think about Regarde les hommes tombés, Merrimack, you know, something like that.
Cold Cell, another one I would mention. I really like Cold Cell.
Cold Cell is from Switzerland, no?
Oh yes, you're right.
We played with them some months ago in Switzerland.
You're right. I take that back. Cold Cell, you're off the list of great French black metal bands.
But it's true. Yes. You want to take something? Sorry, we have to make a little break.
No worries. No worries at all.
So about the French scene, I think it's true. There is no band like Septic Flesh or Rotting Christ or Behemoth.
And this was my point. There was no band that you were looking up to and going, like, those are the guys that we want to be like.
I don't know why, because I think all French bands are very respected by the old scene of the black metal scene. But not this very famous band. Maybe it's too difficult to rise a lot like Gojira. So.
Well, Deathspell Omega, it's actually astonishing how many bands they have influenced. I remember that I was introduced to them when I was writing for a website called Chronicles of Chaos, and I was talking to Morgan from Marduk, and it was him who mentioned them. It's like, oh, this is fucking incredible.
He mentioned who?
Deathspell Omega.
Deathspell Omega.
And he was like, this is, in his mind, and this was like early 2000s, he said this was like the future of black metal. And in many ways, actually, he's correct.
Yeah, it's true.
You think about modern black metal bands, and I think you can probably draw a direct line between the sound of a lot of modern black metal and the first couple of Deathspell Omega releases quite easily.
I think Deathspell Omega was copied by a lot of bands. It's like the old band from Norway, for Norway, because from Norway, because a lot of bands try to copy Burzum, try to copy Dark Throne, to copy Mayhem, and a lot of bands try to copy Deathspell Omega, or just inspired by the Deathspell Omega. Man. There is something special with this band, but it's a good thing because when I listen, I like all the album of Deathspell Omega, but when I listen to Paracletus, Paracletus is just a true masterpiece.
Paracletus is incredible.
Yes, and the last song, just the last song, instrumental song, it's perfect. It's a mix. It's modern black metal because I think it's a mix between black metal and some element of post-hardcore, like Neurosis or Cult of No, something like that. When it was not black metal true with a lot of blast, and this is amazing. This album is amazing. So it's normal that a lot of people say Deathspell Omega is a very important band, but maybe if they make some shows, maybe it will be different. But it's difficult to raise a lot when you don't make a live show.
Well, I was going to say too, you have very complex music and music that is, especially if you're coming from the school of thinking that I'm coming from, it's that thing about how do you engage a listener or an audience member from start to finish on a song that's 8 minutes long. It's not in everybody's wheelhouse to be able to do that. So your approach to live shows, what do you like? As you kind of thinking about how a set is going to, how a set will work from start to finish, for example, or what the stage show is going to be like. What's your thinking around what you want to project for the great old ones into the audience?
It's difficult because generally I make the thing and with my bandmates for ourselves, for myself, for ourselves. So on live, of course, I try to choose the good songs, not a very big song and after that another atmospheric song. No, I want to make this great, but about the decorum of like that, it's also a question of money. If I have a lot of money, I want to make something very bigger. I very like to make a very big decorum. I'm not so interested. I like when it's pure and just true. But when you saw we spoke about Metallica, when you saw the Live Shit and Burge, you know what I mean? In I think in 1989, when you saw the Justice statue with the Fallen, it's not a big thing with everywhere, but it's amazing. Sometimes I really want that, but it's a question of money. We are not Metallica,
and, or Rammstein.
But no, I think I really want to make something very angry, very intense on stage, because I think the music is atmospheric, but I don't want to make just atmospheric things. I think the music is sufficient atmospheric, and us we have to be intense, to be angry. It's not like we are not Watain, Watain is just about hate, about this. Us is different, but when I see a band who make atmospheric music, it's just nothing. Sometimes it's
boring as fuck.
Yeah, sometimes. But you can be very static on stage with a very beautiful light show. It's not a problem. So generally, I really want to work with a light engineer who make for us a very great light show. Tonight, because we are not a headliner, we are just our sound engineer to have a great sound. It's the beginning. So the light will be with the local light engineer. But I think it will be great because our music, it's not very difficult to make something great on light, because you are just if it's always stroboscopic, it's not nice. You have to be very atmospheric and sometimes a little intense. So generally, if I ask that to my light engineer.
Just on Rammstein, by the way, have you seen them live?
Rammstein?
Yeah.
No, never.
Mate, if you ever have the opportunity.
Yes, I know.
It is the most incredible live experience I have. There is nothing that compares to it. Nothing. And you talk about like something that's completely immersive. You just, most of the show, you just like stood there with your mouth open. It's like,
yeah, man. I'm sure about that. And to be honest, I'm really into entertainment. I like that. It's not very black metal, what I will say now, but I've just returned from holidays in New York. I passed 1 week in New York, and sorry, not black metal parentheses. And I saw the theater piece, Harry Potter and the what is the name? And the evil child or something like that.
Yeah, I think it's the evil child.
Yeah, something like that, yes. And about entertainment, it was I never saw that in my life. It was just amazing. And so I'm really into that. I don't want a very big Cthulhu on stage. It was too much, I think. Yeah. But with something, it's a question of immersion. You know, you have to immerse to make something very immersive. I think we have a music about immersion, very immersive music. So live, I really want that. So I'm into entertainment. It's a question of money. So maybe one time I will be able to make the perfect, the great all one show with a lot of things. We will see.
Well, dude, that would be incredible because again, your music is actually quite. If you listen to the albums, it's quite visual. Question for you, Kadath, I think you really nailed that balance between atmosphere and between intensity, but it's also your longest record, I don't know, like 78 minutes or something.
Yes.
What was the thinking around what you wanted to achieve with this record? Because it definitely felt to me, I might even have mentioned it on the news rant, it kind of felt like, it feels when I heard that first single, it was like the band has got something to prove, and they've really stepped up on this album. So what was your thinking around it?
No, it was. I never think about what people want to listen and to prove something. I just want to make an album who speak to me and to my bandmates, of course. If I have not the validation of my bandmates, it's not possible. So. Generally, with this album, I really want to make a very epic album, and to be very the real approach of the short story of Lovecraft, the Dream Quest of Kadath. You know? Yeah. When I want that when you listen to this album, it's like the other album, but when you listen to this album, you really find again the thing when you read the book, the short story. So it's a long album. Sometimes I think with I listen again to it. Sometimes I think it's many too long. It's time to prepare the voice. And sometimes I think I could cut in the song sometimes, but it's music. When you listen, it's not a music you can listen doing something else at the same time. I think it's not possible. Yeah. You have to be focused, and you live a true journey. And so when I make shorter things, when I want, because if I say to myself, well, it's too long, not because it's too long because it's not nice, because it's just too long for radio or something like that. It's not possible because I have to speak a story so yeah, maybe it's too ambitious for that, but
well, one thing I was thinking about as I was listening to you talk is, to what degree do you write with a live experience in mind? Like when you write a song, are you writing it and going, okay, this part here is really going to land when we play this live? Like, do you write with the live, especially given your love of the live experience? Do you write with the live experience?
Sometimes yes, sometimes, but sometimes it's after I wrote the part. You know.
Yeah.
I began to write the part. I began to write some part of Kadath, and I said to myself, wow, it's perfect for live. Or sometimes I said to myself, I want something a little rock and roll, you know, at this time. So generally, it's a lot about drums.
Yeah.
If you put a doom style, it's great for live, but it's not very intense, you know. But if you put a rhythm very rock and roll, you know that in live it will be great. So sometimes I think about that, but I never put a part just for the live. It's because if I put a part, I write a part, it's because it's great in the song and about the story all the time.
You know, I think that this is something that separates the true masters from just guys that are going to sort of, you know, be in bands that reach maybe a certain level of fame, but don't go anywhere beyond that. There's certain, like death metal bands, you get it a lot, especially bands that were putting out records sort of in the early 2000s. A lot of it's just blasting craziness. And it's like, you know, I'm a massive fan of Hate Eternal.
Okay.
But I've seen them live twice, and both times I walked out after 2 songs. It just sounds the fucking same. I can't even. I mean, the first time I saw them, I was like, I know their songs off by heart. I can't even recognize what they're playing right now because the sound is so shit. It's just blasting.
Yeah.
Then you take a band like Deicide and you go, okay, Sacrificial Suicide, you've got that, you know, that break, the damn too well,
true.
And mine. I mean, that is written for the live experience. You've got Mephistopheles, you know, take me, Mephistopheles, live. It doesn't matter, even like they almost write with an insurance policy in mind that even if the sound is fucking terrible, in that venue, we're still going to sound great.
Yeah.
And I've always analyzed that, and like I really admire that of bands, and I think that the bands that are always going to be the best, that will always be the cream that rises to the top, they always think about that when they write.
I'm sure, and it's an old school band, and I think maybe it's different now. We had a discussion with my bandmates about that, about all the deathcore things. I have no problem with all the deathcore things, but like Lord Belial, for example. But sometimes it's too many blasts, too many something.
I don't like it, but it's
but why not? If people want to listen to that, and the singer, it's a very great singer. The singer Lord Belial are a very great voice. He can do everything with his voice. It's really amazing. But sometimes it's too much. And I think it's a difference between, you know, if you can make an album very intense, like when you listen to the album of Emperor, the second one, to the Waking at Dusk, but I remember.
Anthems of the Wild Dusk.
Exactly. It's very intense, you know, with a lot of blast beat. But it's not the same, you know. There is something very emotional. I think you can make something very brutal, but if there is a lack of emotion, it's not possible. You know? So maybe it's a difference. Maybe when you listen to brutal death metal, it's nice. Sometimes it's even fun to listen to very brutal music. You listen brutal, and when you go to the second song, it's exactly the same. You say, "Wow, it's perfect," because you want that. But in live, it's different because to me there is a lack of emotions. You know, it's always the same. So I need there is something special in the music. I want to see live, and us, we try to make that. Sometimes maybe this night we'll begin the show with Middle Dreamer, of course, classical. But it's a long song to begin. But I don't know, there is something like that, there is the break at the middle. I prefer the band who make me travel.
Yeah.
If it's too brutal all the time, I think the first 20 minutes I say, wow, it's perfect. And after that, okay, I see what I want to see.
You kind of go, I kind of want this to end now.
Yeah,
I know what you mean. I've always thought that bands, especially bands that focus on the live experience, they need to write with every eventuality in mind. I'm going to have an incompetent sound engineer and they're not going to be able to mix the stuff. And like you talked about discordance, and I immediately got a grin on my face because I was like, a lot of those bands, they just are completely and utterly unlistenable live, because if there is ever anything even slightly out about the room acoustics, about the mix, about anything, it sounds like fucking dog shit.
Yeah, I remember that Cradle of Filth are famous for that. Now it's better, but I think in the 90s they are very famous for not a great sound on stage. I think it's the beginning. If you have not a great sound on stage, it's not possible. You can people can't appreciate that. It's not possible because it's the beginning of thing. You can make as you want on stage if people, because with a bad sound in metal music you understand nothing. In pop music it's different. It's folk music is different. Maybe it's easier, but if the vocals is too loud or something else, it's not a very big deal. In metal music, if you put like always just drums and vocals and a guitar, you just you understand nothing.
Yeah, and especially if it's fast, it is just literally, it just becomes static. It just becomes white noise. And again, even as somebody who's a fan of a lot of those bands, like I mean, Dying Fetus is a great example. I fucking love Dying Fetus. Now they're a good example of a band that are almost insulated against bad sound because they've got so many breakdowns, so many groovy parts. They're always going to sound good, no matter what the sound person's doing.
Yeah.
Hate Eternal, on the other hand, it's the roll of the dice.
I don't know why, but maybe they are not the good sound engineer, because a good sound engineer don't want to make a bad sound. It's not possible.
Yeah.
I think I said about Cradle of Filth, I think the 90s, maybe it was a little different because it was the beginning of all the symphonic black metal. So sometimes sound engineers say, okay, I have blast beat, guitars, and synths, orchestral things. Maybe now it's easier. I think it's for that. Maybe a band like Cradle of Filth, Septic Flesh, something like that. Great sound now. Now it's not a problem. But in the 90s, maybe it was different.
Well, in fairness to the sound engineers, although the guys that run the sound at the venues, my wife and I were watching Dimmu Borgir at Inferno last year.
Okay.
And we were right behind the mixing desk. And I was watching them work, and I was like, "Holy fuck!" Like they're literally like busy all the time because it's like there's so many things going on, and so many things they need to try and balance, and so many things they need to control.
Yeah.
It's a hard job. It's not something that, you know, when I'm critical, I'm not critical because I want to be horrible, because I genuinely believe that the job they have is not easy.
Yeah. You can say that to my sound engineer. 3 guitars. 3 guitars with a lot of blast beat. Sometimes it's difficult, but he has the habit now. Normally, we will see. Normally, we have a great sound. But I'm sure it's that I said. Dimmu Borgir now. I'm sure if you saw Dimmu Borgir in the 90s, I'm sure maybe not a great sound too, because sound engineer, I think, had not the habit to this type of music, you know.
Getting back to Kadath,
yeah.
So, I mean, you guys have been, the one bit of DNA you share with Blut aus Nord is, you know, the focus and the fixation on H.P. Lovecraft.
Yes.
With the Kadath story, what was the attraction for you in that? I mean, I would assume there will never be a time where Great Old Ones doesn't make a record that is H.P. Lovecraft centered, but with Kadath in particular, what was the appeal to that story for you? I
really wanted to make something different with this album in terms of concept, because since the beginning of the band, inspired me about Lovecraft. So everybody knows that, but about the Cthulhu mythos. And after the time, I rediscover some different things about Lovecraft. I read that when I was a teenager, but sometimes I think everybody generally know the Cthulhu mythos, but all the part of the dream cycle or something like that is different. And I really want to make something different with this album. And when I read again the Dream Quest of Kadath, I realized, wow, it's very particular. It's not easy to read, but it's very particular. And it's different because it's fantasy with horror things, of course, it's Lovecraft. So to be totally honest, I began to write one song or something like that, beginning of song or new song, and I really felt something different, something lighter, something more epic. And so when I read again the Dream Quest, I say, wow, it's this thing. It's the perfect way to adapt with the music I composed at this time. So, well, it's like I just want to make something different, just like that.
Yeah.
Than the Cthulhu mythos, as always.
Lovecraft is such a almost permanent figure. I mean, he's like, I would say, second to Satan in metal. As far as his influence on lyrics and on the kind of themes around the band. Well, what is it about Lovecraft that you believe has made his story so enduring, has made it live on through so many generations and years?
I think metalheads in general and metal artists really like when a writer made an entire universe, and I think it's for that some band was inspired by the Tolkien, Lord of the Rings. And with Lovecraft, there is something entire, especially with the Cthulhu mythos, of course, with all the entities, with the cosmogony of Lovecraft, and I think for that, I think metalheads are little geek people, But I'm like that. I have not a problem to be a little geek, and passionate people. So it's better and it's easier to be passionate by a writer who make an entire universe, because it's really fun when you read a short story, in general, or a novel, to find some elements you read in another story, So I think it's for that, and there is something very dark, very nihilistic things in Lovecraft, and it's perfect for metal.
I'm about to say, it lends itself incredibly well to metal, black metal especially.
We like dark things. So in Lovecraft there is this thing with the big entities, like I said, Azatos, Cthulhu, Shod-Negras, is something special. And there is this thing, metal always, in general, speak about dark thing. I like this type of music when I was a teenager about that, because there is something, when you listen to the other music, it's just all happiness. And this thing, metal is not afraid to speak about the dark things of the life.
Yeah.
And imagine dark things when it's fantastic, of course. And Lovecraft, it's about that, because the man is not the center of the universe, it's different. There is something different. And it's particular because in black metal, with all the Luciferism thing, it's different because man in its center, it is its own god, and Lovecraft is not that at all. It's just, we are insignificant, So it's different, but it's very interesting because it's very nihilistic. So I like this type. I'm not a nihilist, I think. Sometimes yes, sometimes no, or depends. But in Lovecraft, you can see Lovecraft in his writings. It's very interesting to
and it's also about what inspires you creatively. You don't have to be somebody. Let's be honest. We were talking about Deicide earlier. They're not Satanists. Yet Satan inspires all of their music. So you don't have to be necessarily into something. I think to the degree that you adopt it as a life choice in order for it to be something that inspires you creatively. But I was curious about what you said about we're into dark things. I mean, that is absolutely true. When did you start to gravitate towards darker subject matter? And I'll just to probably contextualize that. I remember being young and being completely like any book I could get hold of, and this is I hadn't even turned 10 years old. Any book that I could get hold of. That was something about ghosts or something about the paranormal, I was instantly engaged with, and I've been like that my whole life. I've often wondered, now that I've turned 45 and I reflect back on your life, I kind of go, why was I, and I've been trying to question, why was I attracted to those things? But it feels like it's just always been there, and I've always been, it's always been something that I wanted to be, that was part of me, if you understand what I mean.
Yeah, of course. I think when you are a teenager, you search this type of things. Of course, you search sensation, extreme sensation, and I was exactly the same as you when I was a teenager, because I remember my mother booked to me a book. It was a book for teenager, but it was a vampire alone or something like that. And after that, I read a lot of Stephen King stories. And I don't know why. I'm not sure it's good or bad. To be honest, I'm not sure it's good or bad.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
That's why I keep asking myself that question. It's like, why was I so into this?
Yeah, I don't know. And maybe our life will be different if we were not into the dark things, but not in a good way. I don't know, but I really remember I want that. I want to listen something very dark, very these horror things. To be honest, I don't know why. Maybe I think, it's not what I will say is not a style of very strong man. I know it's a question of emotion and sensitive. I'm sure we was sensitive teenagers. Maybe I am wrong, but I think when you have this sensitivity about things, you want to experiment different things. Because, but I have good friends. They don't like horror things. It's not possible to them. They are my friends, but.
My wife doesn't like horror either, so.
You don't like horror things?
No.
Friend of me went to see This Substance. The movie with Demi Moore.
Oh yeah. Well, that she actually enjoyed.
I like that.
Yeah, you like?
Yeah.
But my friends see half of the movie and say, "Oh no, it's not possible." But to come back to the style of dark thing when I was a teenager, I think it's a question of sensitivity. You are sensitive to different things, and I'm sure with a lot of sensitivity, you are sensible to music, and you are sensible to emotions. You are sensible to write something, to listen something. I'm sure it's that, and sometimes there is something with a dark thing because when you are a teenager, you like a very with Kiss and all that thing, or corpse paint after with black metal. It's a type of fascination.
There's something that is empowering about hearing David Vincent go, come forth, ancient ones, demons. There is absolutely, I don't think anyone who's not experienced it firsthand will understand it, but it is absolutely, when you're a young man growing up and unsure of the world, unsure of your place in the world, and as you say, it has that sensitivity. I think there's something incredibly empowering about that.
I think it's a cry of rebellion,
Yeah.
When you listen to that, I remember the first time I listened to a Satana from Emperor.
Masterpiece.
Yes, of course. But it was a true cry of a rebellion. I think maybe it's a question to find our place in the world, in the life. And when you listen to that, say, there is something who make me feeling in my place.
Yeah.
But. And all that thing about parents, sometimes you like because your parents don't like this type of music. It's normal, I think.
No, well, that's the thing. I listen to a lot of music that my parents listen to. I don't think it was ever intended to be rebellion against my parents. It was always, I was always interested in it. I heard AC/DC for the first time, and I heard Angus Young's guitar. I was like, that is like I've described it before. I felt like I had found a missing limb.
Oh, okay. I mean, maybe it's a little different because my parents are very Christians.
Oh, so am I.
Yeah, so when I was a teenager, I really want to make very loud Emperor, Satana,
You see, I was nervous, like listening to some of the music I was liking. I told my daughter the other day. My daughter is 11 years old now, so she's into collecting vinyl. So I play her some of the stuff I'm into. I played a Painkiller by Judas Priest, and I said, I was so terrified listening to this when I was young because one, I thought it was the most evil shit that I've ever heard in my life. I was
Painkiller. The song Painkiller. The song Painkiller is violent. Huh?
And I said, I was terrified of what my parents were going to think, because I literally thought that I'm listening to the sounds of hell when they were recorded. But again, it was one of those albums where really pivotal. As soon as I heard it, I was like, oh, have I missed this my whole life? It feels like it should have been part of my whole life.
Yeah, I remember when I listened to sometimes not metal music. I'm really into the Smashing Pumpkins, at this time. Yeah. And there is a song on the double album. It's XYU, something like that. On the second disc, on the blue disc.
Yeah, and I know the album. I just can't remember. I can't place the song.
It's very violent. It's a ta 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 ta. Don't remember? No. You have to listen it again. It's very violent. There is he scream all the time, and when he scream and very loud thing, and I put that. And before I listened to metal, I listened to that. I was, wow, it's so perfect.
I'll tell you what's a great song that Smashing Pumpkins did, Soma.
Yeah.
On Siamese Dream. I don't give a fuck what style of music you're into. That is a great track.
But Smashing Pumpkins was very particular when I was young, because you can listen some very beautiful music, very calm, and after that I think there is a heavy metal influence in the Smashing Pumpkins. So
without a doubt.
Black Sabbath. Have
you seen Billy Corgan's podcast?
No.
Like, he talks often about, like, I was into Slayer, I was into this band,
okay.
that band. So he's always been into metal.
And it was very. It's my entrance in metal music, my door through metal
Smashing
music.
Pumpkins.
Smashing Pumpkins. And the first rock album I booked, I think, with my home money, was a rock album, because the first one was Eurodance, but it was different. I was young, and I booked Smash from The Offspring.
Oh yeah, no, I know that.
And I like to listen it, but it's nostalgia. But sometimes I listen, and after that, with the Smashing Pumpkins, I discover something more violent sometimes. And after that was Metallica, and after that was Dimmu Borgir, Dark Throne. Very quickly.
Just every single time.
Yeah, of course.
One last question I want to ask you. You have been the stability, the stable point in a numerous number of lineup changes in Great Old Ones. Like, you've been the anchor that's held the band together. What has kept you inspired and motivated to keep doing the Great Old Ones, despite people leaving and things changing in the band? About
lineup changement, I will not explain all the changement, because
no.
there was a lot of changements. Because I really love to compose music. I really like to play this with. There are some of my bandmates who are in the band since a long time now. So there is a big motivation. I really like to make live shows, and when I compose, I really compose for myself, for my emotions. Imagine I'm in front of my home studio, like everybody, and I play, and sometimes I find a riff, and I play it. I record it, but I play it during 10 minutes in loop, because there is something very emotional into that. So this is my carburant, to continue the Great Old One, because I think we can make another great album. I'm sure I want to make something different. Maybe the next album will be shorter. We will see. I say that.
You just spoken about a double album. I know it's already going through your mind.
To be honest, every album I said, I want to make shorter album. I want to make our black album.
Yeah.
I fail all the time because I want to speak about a story, so it's difficult in a very short time. But to be honest, I compose quite alone for the Great Old Ones. But my bandmates are really great composers, so I'm sure with the next album I can ask to them to make some riffs, some parts. It will be sometimes different, and it will be very great. So I think we have have a band like the Great Old Ones, or like all the band at the same level. sometimes I say to myself, I have to continue to respect all the other bands who make that. You know what I mean? It's not to be it's not to say that sometimes you make a lot of shows and it begins to be an habit. You know, you are not wow. And I really want to stay a little wow about all that thing. Tonight is very great. We play on the main stage. It's a big stage. I want to say to myself, I'm lucky to make that.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm lucky. I hope there is a little of talent, but it's a question of luck, I'm sure. It's a question, it's always the same. Talent maybe, luck, the good time, you know, to make that. And for that, I want to continue because if I stop, maybe one time, one time I will stop, but I don't know when. But I said to myself, well, no, it's not fair. It's not fair because we have a place, we have something to do better. I want to continue.
And also, just as we wrap up, shout out to Julian, because he's an absolute savage. You guys have recruited a phenomenal drummer.
Yeah.
But Ben, thank you.
Not 14 years old.
Not 14 years old, like I said.
said.
Thank you so much for your time, my man.
Thank you very much.
Really, such a pleasure talking to you, and I'm looking forward to seeing you guys play.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your kind words about Kadath. It was very
well deserved and from the heart, mate.
Thank you.
Cool. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Away
The Great Old Ones with a song called Me the Dreamer that is taken from their new album Kadath, released by Season of Mist earlier this year. Huge thank you to Benjamin Guerry, my guest. I hope you guys enjoyed that conversation. What a great guy. I would love to have him back on the show at some point. I think we would have plenty more to talk about. Again, apologies if things were a little broken or if there was a bit of noise in the background, but that's kind of what you get when you sit backstage. I think the gist of it should still come out nice and clear. All right, my friends, we're going to go straight into the news rant. One quick thing to mention. I'm recording this on Monday, so I released the episodes Tuesday for those of you guys that you happen to stumble onto this by mistake. Less than 24 hours before the new episode comes out, I literally went from a work call straight to doing the news rant. I forgot that I still had my work shirt on. So if you're watching the news rant and you're going, who is this fucking nerd in the Boss polo shirt? No, I'm not. This is not me entering my preppy phase. This is me having completely forgotten to change shirts. Naturally, I can't go on to client meetings and stuff like that wearing pentagrams and upside down crosses and whatnot. But the news rant had gone so well, I was like, there's no fucking way I'm re-recording this. So anyway, with that out of the way, let me issue a public service announcement, as I'm prone to do before the news rant. If you are one of those sniveling, low-testosterone imbeciles singing along with excitement at the Venga Boys at Download Festival this past weekend, about an hour or so ago, you should already have hit the bricks, because this is my weekly news rant.
A roundabout for judgment. And hang them where the world can see.
Before we get started, let me just comment one more time on how completely and utterly disgraceful it was to see the Venga Boys play at Download and then to have the flock stream en masse to social media to proclaim what an incredible thing it was to have them there. And anybody that complains is a crusty old metaler, a boomer, etc., etc. There used to be a day when, whether it was called Monsters of Rock, Donington, even Download, where that was the highest level at which you could perform as a metal band in the UK when it came to festivals and it came to the sheer number of people that were going to be there. I remember in South Africa growing up, you'd catch little snippets of Monsters of Rock on MTV Headbangers Ball, and I'd watch that and I'd go, man, just imagine what it would be like to be on that stage. Now, I think being included on the Donington or the Download lineup is probably a bit of a red flag more than it is anything else. Who did they have there this year? Green Day, fucking complete and utter shite. President, the worst band this side of Sleep Token. The heaviest thing they had on the lineup, from what I can recall, is Anel Nathrak, and let's be perfectly honest, Anel Nathrak's best days are well and truly behind them. Their final goodbye to the world, as far as I'm concerned, at least when it came to recorded music, is a new kind of horror. Came out in 2018. Endarkenment is a blemish on an otherwise almost flawless discography. Are they ever going to release new music? I highly doubt it. So, yeah, it's not like I was ever going to attend Download, but I will just stress once again, it is a massive problem to me that the biggest rock and metal festival in the UK now has a lot more in common with Glastonbury than it does with Wacken, or even Bloodstock here in the UK. And I think that anybody that anybody that was throwing balloons up in the air and singing "Boom, boom, boom, I want you in my room" when Venga Boys were playing, we have absolutely fuck all in common musically and probably on a personal level as well. Moving on to metalstorm.net, Ghost Batch disclose European summer touring plan. Ghost Batch, of course, is what you write when you can't be bothered to spell check and you actually mean to be talking about Ghost Bath. I had an opportunity to get old Dennis from Ghost Batch back on the podcast, but I declined. Mostly because that new Ghost Batch album is really a batch of fucking horse poo. And I would have felt disingenuous getting him on the show. Really liked the bloke when I had him on previously. Enjoyed that last Ghost Bath album. But they truly have gone from being Ghost Bath to Ghost Batch on this new record, and I never want to entertain getting somebody on whose music I don't like. So, a band whose music I do enjoy though, and thoroughly, Lord Belial. They have put out a third single of this forthcoming album, Unholy Trinity. That should be marked down in your calendars as coming out on June the 27th. And I've got to tell you, I may have mentioned this when I listened to the previous single that they put out. This is probably the most excited that I have been about a Lord Belial album in the entire history of that band's career. It says here, Black Metal Masters Lord Belial have unveiled a brand new single entitled Antichrist, which features a guitar solo from the legendary Andy LaRocque. The track is part of the band's next full-length offering, Unholy Trinity, blah, 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 due out on June the 27th. Let's hear what it sounds like. Got to tell you, it warms the cockles of my heart to have a band, be going for 33 years and counting, and be capable of putting out a track that fucking solid. And it also warms the cockles of my heart to kick off a news rant with a song that is absolutely, unquestionably top-notch. I would suggest that this is probably the best of the three singles that they've put out so far. I once again, not been this excited for a Lord Belial release ever. The song is malevolent. It sounds fucking snarling and vicious. There's none of that softening of the edges like you sometimes get with Swedish black metal. The vocals sound fucking aggressive, brutal. I think the drumming is great. And what I really, really like is anytime there's a tempo change, anytime there's a change in the kind of tone of the song, it seems to be incredibly intentional. You know, I've mentioned before, one of my pet peeves with a lot of bands is that they seem to kind of write these sequences and then they piece them together. So what you end up getting is like a part that's mid-tempo and then all of a sudden it's a blast, and it's almost like they've thrown these things into the song just for the sake of doing it. No such bullshit with this track. This is just fucking just satanic goodness from start to finish. So again, tier 1, fan-fucking-tastic. Lord Belial will definitely be on, or at least a contender for my top 30 of 2025. And if they don't make that list, there would need to have been some absolutely spectacular shit coming out over the course of the next 6.5 months. It brings me to a question that was submitted by a member of the Legion. Kelu666 has asked me, What are your top 5 albums for the first half of 2025? And surprisingly enough, it's relatively easy. I'm going to give you my top 5 list, but let me give the caveat and say that this is not in any particular order. So, read into that what you wish. I've not done the full December calibration yet that I normally do, the end of year calibration. But top 5 albums in no particular order for 2025 so far: Titan Blood, From the Visceral Abyss; Trivax, The Great Satan; Abduction, Existentialismus; Serpents, Desert Psalms; and Scour, Gold. Those are my favorites. And then I also had another question. Let me just be able to credit the individual who asked that. God damn it, let me find it. For fuck's sake, I can't find the person who sent it in now. I'll see if I can dig it up while we listen to another song. But I did get asked, what are albums that I'm most looking forward to in 2025 that haven't been announced yet? Now, I don't know if you think old Jackson has got some sort of access to a fucking crystal ball, or I'm some industry insider. I know some shit that goes on, but I don't know. I probably don't know enough to give you a fully educated answer to that question. Obviously, I know that there's new Werewolves coming out, but they've already announced that. Tombs, Mike has mentioned that on the Everything Went Black podcast. I've heard both albums, both fantastic. Looking forward to them being released purely because I'm excited to see how they do for those for the respective bands. Then ones that I know that are coming, or are done in the can, what have you. Bloodhouse North, I know, just finished mixing their new album. You would assume it gets released in 2025. Very much looking forward to that. I would waver a guess and say that we must be due some new Mayhem in 2025. There is usually a 5 to 7 year gap between releases from that band, and we're now, by my estimation, on year number 6. So it's either going to be this year or next year. Norma Evangelium Diaboli always drop a surprise towards the end of the year with something. I'm sure we're going to get something this year, and every single year I hold out hope for that Funeral Mist album, the next Funeral Mist record. You would also assume that Marduk probably are going to get to the end of their touring cycle for Memento Mori this year, which means that after the festivals and stuff, who knows, maybe Mortus has an opportunity to write some new music. And those are pretty much it. I don't really think there's anything else that I definitely know is coming for this year that I would be, that I'm especially excited for. Normally what I find is the second half of the year, like first half of the year, is usually bands that I know putting out records that, those are the ones that are sort of high up on the radar. And then the second half of the year I find is when the biggest surprises start coming out of the woodwork. So I'm basically, the correct answer to that question really is I'm looking forward to the surprises in 2025, of which I am hopeful there are going to be many. All right, moving on to a new single by Till Lindemann. Till Lindemann, of course, the frontman for Rammstein. Now, I know this is not to everybody's taste, but you guys are going to have to indulge me. I saw this had come out, and I saved it for the news rant. So I will say I've not been the biggest fan of Till's solo material. I am, of course, a very big fan of Rammstein. Not every single song, but, if you've seen them live, you just have an affinity for their music. But, out of curiosity as much as anything else, I'm keen to hear what the song sounds like. It says here, Till Lindemann is premiering a brand new standalone single called Und die Engel singen, which I would assume translates to And the Angel Sings. The latter is available for streaming with an accompanying music video directed by Anna Gray. Once again, given that it's a Till Lindemann music video, you expect depravity and degeneracy from the start. So if you've got the kids with you, probably time to send them out of the room. If, of course, you're watching this on YouTube. Let's hear what this one sounds like.
ist Firmament. Die Zeit vergeht, doch meine Zeit verbrennt. Die Flügel schwer, schwer wie Blei. Im Schattenreich der Dunkelheit. Hoffnungslos in Zuversicht. Und die Engel singen nur für mich. Wenn die Sonne durch die Wolken bricht, wenn wir weinen, uns vereinen, doch die Schatten holen mich zurück. Ein letzter Atemzug.
Well, I was definitely right about one thing, and that is that music video is completely fucked up. But that's par for the course when it comes to Till. I like the song. I think if you're a Rammstein fan, this is probably more in line with what you would have wanted to hear from him than a lot of his other solo stuff. I mean, like Praise Abort and all that sort of shit. It just sounded like he was messing around there. I know he would have wanted to get away from sounding like Rammstein as much as he possibly could on his solo material. The reality is, quite frankly, this sounds like it could be a Rammstein song. I think if you play this to anybody and said, hey, that's the new Rammstein single, they wouldn't bat an eyelid, no matter how well they knew the band. But you need to play to your strengths at the end of the day. And even if he's a bit of a one-trick pony, I think what he does very, very fucking well. And I have said it many times before, but just in case the message hasn't landed properly, you do need to make sure that you see Rammstein live at least once in your life. I don't care if you don't like seeing big shows, or I don't even care if you don't like being around big crowds. I don't like being around big crowds either. But if there is one thing that you do in your life vis-a-vis music, or live music at the very least, definitely make sure that you see Rammstein play live. They are absolutely fucking incredible. All right. By the way, Frozen Swole was the Legion member, and I should say a long-serving Legion member, who asked me that question about albums that have not come out yet this year, or not been announced yet this year, that I'm looking forward to. Again, let me just encourage you, if you do want to ask a question, make sure you drop it in the comments, or send me a DM on Instagram or Facebook or X, or just send me an email. There's plenty of ways to get through to me. Usually what I do, if I know I'm going to do a solo news rant, I tend to post an announcement in my Instagram stories, probably on like the Friday or Saturday, and then I'll just say, send me some questions through. But the more questions, the better. Number one, and number two, ask me about any fucking thing you want. I've got a really good one that I'll talk about in a second. Definitely when it comes to questions, no topics are off limits. I might, I may have to do a little bit of censorship. Like, I'm not going to sit here talking for fucking half hour about what I think of Israel attacking Iran or some shit like that. But, generally speaking, I'm more than happy to talk about anything you want to talk about. All right, we're going to give that Cryptopsy single a skip, purely because next week I've got Matt on the show, Matt McGeachy, as I announced in the intro. So it's going to be Cryptopsy Mania on Into the Necrosphere for episode 278. Therefore, let's give him a little rest this week. Safe to say, it is another fucking excellent single, and Cryptopsy basically, on this new album and on the previous one, have not missed as far as I'm concerned. That band is most definitely back with a fucking vengeance. And if you like Cryptopsy, and even if you don't, you are definitely going to want to check out next week's episode. Matt, this was the second time Matt and I had spoken, so a lot of those first-time jitters, that first-time awkwardness, that's gone. He was totally relaxed. Probably had a couple of beers, but that liquid libation just loosened him up a little bit more, and made for a better conversation overall. More music. Nailed to Obscurity have released a video for Spirit Corrosion, which is the name of their new single. It says here, Nailed to Obscurity are delighted to unveil another single from their upcoming 5th studio album, Generation of the Void, due out for release on September the 5th, 2025 via Nuclear Blast Records. The song Spirit Corrosion is available for streaming together with an official music video. We'll see how delighted they are once they've been rounded up for judgment. That is about as much of the fucking lameness as I'm going to be able to endure. That is definitely not my taste whatsoever. As a matter of fact, I would say those vocals coming from the vocal cords of a man, where I come from, earn you a swirly and potentially even a turbo wedgie. Maybe some people will like this. I'm not one of those people. Riffs are okay, but when the singing began, I just knew we were dealing with some low testosterone poser dog shit. How this band is signed to Nuclear Blast, I have no idea. I don't know whether it's because they're from Germany, and obviously Nuclear Blast are, or at least once upon a time were, a German label. It's not like they've got a ton of fandom on Metal Archives. Their previous album, Black Frost, scored a whopping 62%, and then the one prior to that, King Delusion, that one is sitting pretty on 52%. So yeah, so I've never even fucking heard of them. So I'm uncertain as to why Nuclear Blast felt there was marketability here, but you know, again, there were people cheering and screaming like fucking imbeciles at the Venga Boys playing Download. So you know, maybe it's marketed to those people. Okay, moving on. Jungle Rot working on new material. That's going to be quite cool. They're a bit of a hit or miss band when it comes to, or at least as far as I'm concerned. But they've put out a couple of reasonable tracks, reasonable records. One song I really, really like, I think it's called Here Comes the Bomb. Or no, I think it's called Carpet Bombing. I just know the end of it. It's only like 1 minute and 40 seconds long. And then right at the end, the vocalist just yells, "Here comes the bomb." It's so fucking cool. It's so like caveman knuckle dragging death metal, but in like the best possible way. Right, Putridity. We did listen to a Putridity track not too long ago. I think I'm going to probably give that one a miss. Then we move on to another German band. This one, a brutal death metal formation, as they are called on Metal Storm. The band is called Begging for Incest, and I've got to say, that might be one of the fucking stupidest names for a band I've ever heard in my entire life. You know, begging to have sex with your parents or with your fucking siblings. It sounds like a name that was thought up by someone where English is maybe their fifth language. let alone their second. And they thought, "Wow, this sounds edgy and cool, kind of as fucking moronic as Infant Annihilator." Yeah, so they're already losing me on the name. But either way, I do want to hear what it sounds like. It says here, the German brutal death metal band Begging for Incest have announced the release of their third studio record, Going Postal, their first in 9 years, and clearly the world has been waiting for it with bated breath. It's scheduled for an August 22nd, 2025 official release. The first single, Black Lung, is already available for streaming below. No mention of the record label, but let's hear what this one sounds like. All right. We've asserted that the name is a 0 out of 10. Just straight up 0 out of 10. Fucking stupid dog shit. The production, reasonable. Let's give that 6.5 out of 10. But actually, no, I'll be charitable. 7 out of 10. The vocals, minus a million out of 10. I swear to God, I'm getting to a point with fucking pig squeals and these stupid cupping deathcore vocals where, yeah, I just think if you're going to do that, then you should be given the Singapore cane. 40 lashes with a Singapore cane. It doesn't sound brutal. It doesn't sound aggressive. It doesn't sound convincing. It just sounds fucking stupid. Like, if you compare this, let's take a deep voice. Frank Mullen on Pierced from Within. That I can't remember the name of the song, but the lyric, human life means little to me. I mean, that is convincing, badass shit. Steve Tucker on Formulas Fatal to the Flesh. In my being, I am, I will, I create. That is hard as fucking shit. Everything Sam Bean does on every Werewolves album, absolutely malicious and deadly. And the list goes on and on. I'm consciously making an effort not to keep talking about Glenn Benton on the first Deicide album, but I will if I must, because that is not the way to do brutal death metal vocals. It just sounds fucking idiotic. So minus a million out of 10 for that. What I will say, giving them their due, that opening, 4/4 chug, that's pretty entertaining. But I mean, yeah, it's just not I don't know who the fuck listens to this shit. There are a million other bands that you could check out. If you want to hear something like that, check out Pyrexia. That last Pyrexia album has got plenty of slam, hard as shit, really deep vocals, but I mean, it sounds truly convincingly aggressive and nasty. So anyway, we're going to get to that Dark Angel new single in just a second, but let's grab some more questions here from the Legion, submitted by the Legion. Dry Lung Vocal Martyr, he says, have you heard of any extreme metal from Southeast Asia or India specifically? If yes, which one stood out for you? If not, would you be interested in listening to a few bands out of India? Thank you, and full unequivocal support into the Necrosphere and the Horsemen. Dry Lung Vocal Martyr is a absolutely top-notch dude. One of the most vocal supporters of this podcast. always shares episodes, always comments, always messages me, gives me feedback. So, shout out to him because he really is a, top dude. And then I am ashamed to say it because, I'm sure he asked it with intent, but no, I don't really off the top of my head know a lot of bands from India or from Southeast Asia. I'm sure there will be a couple that if somebody mentions the name to me specifically, I will, it'll ring true, but I can't think of any off the top of my head. I would love to hear some. So any recommendations, any suggestions? You guys have got a pretty reasonable handle on what kind of music I like. If you listen to the news rant, drop them in the comments or ping me some links. I'll check them out. But don't know any off the top of my head, unfortunately. But to Dry Lung Vocal Martyr, you are a fucking absolute. You're a man's man and a gentleman, and I really want to say thank you very much for your support, you and everybody else from the Legion. Then I've got a super interesting question. I hinted at this one earlier. Beru Fend has sent me a question. Hey Jackie, question for the news rant. As a fellow corporate that's about a decade your junior, I'm curious to know what your ideal retirement looks like. I assume it's back in the motherland with wine, barbecue, rugby, and black metal, but keen to hear all the glorious details of the Smith retirement plan. Yeah, dude, that's an interesting question because I stress about my retirement on an almost daily basis, and it's not because I plan to retire early. I think, and I don't want to get too deep on this because this is not the financial literacy half hour with Jackie Smith. But, I do think a lot of people don't realize that, like, how much money you actually need to be able to retire in a modest degree of comfort. Like if you like in the let's take the UK as an example because I live here. If you want to retire with roughly £50,000 as your retirement salary, paid to you annually, you need a pension pot of around about £1 million. And I can tell you right now, if you do a straw poll with all of your friends between the age of 35 and 45 and ask them how far off are you from having $1 million in your pension pot, they're going to probably look at you cross-eyed and act like you're fucking out of your mind. For a lot of people, a big chunk of that used to come from, or big chunk of their retirement used to come from the proceeds they got off selling their house. Nowadays, the government here taxes you into oblivion when it comes to you selling your house, and equally, how homes are becoming, more and more unaffordable. So, and also in the interest of full transparency, I'm nowhere near $1 million either. So, would I like to get to it? Absolutely, that's the goal. The goal is actually a little bit more than that. But just so you also understand the thinking behind that $1 million, it is, a 5% return against a pot of $1 million that you're not in drawdown on. So just so nobody tries to correct my math, that is the math. 5% return against against that sum of money, and you're not in drawdown. Again, not to turn this into the financial literacy half hour. But anyway, getting to the question, I think there's two ways to answer that. Number one, what would be my dream retirement? My dream retirement would be to win the Euro Millions right now, and if I did, I would dedicate all of my time to fucking around, to the gym, to doing this podcast full time. I would still not make I wouldn't want to make any money off of it, but I would set myself up in a really nice studio. I would up the production values of the podcast, and I would make sure that Into the Necrosphere is presented in the way that I'd kind of always envisioned. I tinker around with the presentation on the podcast, as you guys have no doubt seen. Some of that tinkering has led to a few pretty questionable decisions. I go back sometimes and I check out some of the old episodes. I watched a chunk off of the Greg McIntosh conversation that I did, many episodes ago. And that fucking animated fire loop, or that kind of smoldering fire loop that I used to have in the background, fucking hell, that looked dreadful. So hopefully it looks better now. Hopefully you guys like the look of the podcast now. But I also switched from Adobe Premiere Rush to CapCut to do the edits. So I try my best with the limited amount of time and resources that I have to hand to give you guys a good looking show, especially because I'm noticing more and more people are actually watching the podcast on YouTube as opposed to streaming it on Spotify and Apple. I mean, those numbers are going up as well, but YouTube seems to be where most of the growth is coming from. So, yeah, I try and do the best I can from a presentation perspective. But if I had the financial ability or the financial independence, and I could retire at an early enough age, then that would be what I would do. I'd train, focus on growing the podcast, and focus on raising kids. Paige and I are very much planning to have more kids. Obviously, I have my daughter from my previous marriage, but we would very much like to have kids of our own as well. So that would be what I would do. The ideal retirement for me is most likely just right now my focus is on getting to that point that I mentioned before, where I can retire without that big of an impact to my standard of living. That retirement could potentially be could take place in South Africa, but that's also going to depend on an awful lot of things, particularly in relation to the present government. No, there is not a full-blown genocide happening as the American president has suggested that there is, but there is a economic genocide. I wouldn't even call it economic genocide. I would call it economic harakiri, and it affects the whole entire country because the fucking communist scum that run the country are just stealing from the public coffer to a point where every single public institution in that country is now bankrupt. Airline, transport, electric grid, everything is fucking bankrupt. And I don't know how much longer the country can last. That's the honest truth. So again, not to go down that whole rabbit hole, but it does impact on my thinking around whether we would move there when I retire. As it stands, we could probably stay where we are and be pretty comfortable as well. So. That's a roundabout way of answering your question. But I really do appreciate that you asked something that's very different to the standard questions that I get on the show. If anyone would like to know what stocks to invest in, no, I'm only kidding around. All right, Dark Angel premiere a brand new single. Thrash metal legends Dark Angel have released Circular Firing Squad as the second single off their long-awaited new record Extinction Level event. That is due to be released later this year. It will be their first record in more than 3 decades. The album's first single, titled Extinction Level Event, was released last April. That one left me relatively floppy in the meat, but let's hear where the Circular Firing Squad could get the juices pumping. It's not bad. Definitely better than that first single. It is still no Darkness Descends. I mean, Jesus, you can take any fucking song off Darkness Descends, whether it's The Burning of Sodom, Hunger of the Undead, Black Prophecies, basically anything off Darkness Descends absolutely tears this fucking song a second, third, and fourth anus. But for a band that has not been around for a while, coming back, I mean, let's take the last Sodom single as an example. We listened to that last week. This is way fucking better than that. Interesting little touch that, almost borderline Strapping Young Lad vocal line that they used in there, that melodic sort of, overdubbed singing. I don't know whether I like that, to be honest with you. I think if Strapping Young Lad does it, it's fine because, Devin has got a way of, or at least used to have a way of writing songs that utilize that very, very well. Yeah, it kind of feels like it's just pasted on. Decent drumming. I think Ron Reinhardt sounds okay. But yeah, I mean, I would give this a cautious thumbs up. It's not shit. But again, I'm not, when I heard that Dark Angel was going to put out a new album, I was genuinely excited. I think what's missing for me is it just, there's as a matter of fact, as I think about it, I'm retracting that thumbs up. It's just mid. When I'm super critical and I don't just kind of, I guess, allow nostalgia to cloud my judgment, then I have to admit that this is just very mid. There is a lack of balls, like a lack of fucking real meanness to this music. And that was always the thing, top tier thrash, it has to have that. It has to have that, like, that feeling that you get when you just want to fucking break shit and wherever you are. And I get that from those early Testament records. I get it from Forbidden Evil. I get it from a bunch of fucking legendary thrash albums. I mean, not to mention some of the more legendary crossover records, but I'm just not getting it from this. I don't get that feeling of, like when you get that like pulse of adrenaline going through your body when you hear it. Maybe it's age, maybe it's just the fact that, I don't know, maybe they're writing music to a brand. We've spoken about that phenomenon before. Bands stop writing what comes naturally to them, or what they're inspired to write, and they write to a brand, or to what they think people expect to hear from them. Yeah. Anyway, let me on that note, actually, I wanted to check out the new Biohazard track that I saw dropped probably about 24 hours ago. So let me get that, and let's give that a quick listen. All right, so I've got it queued up here. I noticed a couple of hours ago that this had dropped. Of course, the song is called Forsaken. It is taken from their forthcoming album. Actually, I could also probably have added that, the Biohazard album, into that forthcoming album. Forthcoming albums I'm looking forward to list, although equally, the last couple of Biohazard records weren't particularly good. But this I'm curious to hear, because the clips that they had released on YouTube that people took with their phones and stuff like that, we may even have listened to one of the news rant. That sounded pretty positive. It kind of sounded like they were going back a little bit to that old school sound, old school vibe that, frankly makes Biohazard as fucking cool as they are. When it comes to old school Biohazard, the first three albums, especially Urban Discipline, I mean, those are some of the best records, like hardcore albums, hardcore albums in Biohazard style, because they're not a pure hardcore band, but yeah, just Biohazard albums, just fucking cool, heavy ass, testosterone laced records that you will ever hear in your entire life. We're going to listen to this Biohazard song, and then we're going to discuss that fucking little nerd that, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see it in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. Draugveil is the name of, or he's his black metal name. He is pictured on the album cover, lazing sexily on a bed of roses with his sword held aloft, as if to say, "Ladies, if you like my sword, wait until you taste my knife, my meat blade." But we're gonna get to that right after this Biohazard song. Let's hear what the Biohazard boys have got for us. Well, that is definitely very old school Biohazard, right down to the point that they're almost ripping themselves off a little bit in that bridge section that we just heard now. But I mean, I don't give a fuck because it sounds very cool. I like it a lot. I know that again, it won't be to everybody's taste, but this is definitely the most promising indication of what the new Biohazard album would sound like that I think we could have hoped for in 2025, if indeed you're a Biohazard fan. And once again, if you've not seen these guys live, seriously do yourself a favor and watch them. Right after Rammstein, I would say Biohazard is one of the other bands that are a must see. I don't give a shit what music you listen to, unless the only singer that you turn, or the only band that you turn on, the only album you listen to every single day is the new Drogvale. You definitely need to be checking out Biohazard. So that gets a thumbs up from me, most definitely. Now, speaking of Drogvale, let's get this little fucking weasel up on screen. So, if you are watching this on YouTube, you are seeing, no doubt, the album cover that you've spotted on almost every fucking black metal and extreme metal forum going at the moment. This Young Blood is the talk of the town. The album is entitled Cruel World of Dreams and Fears. It was released on Black Metal Promotion on Friday, and as of right now, I believe it's racked up over 25,000 listens. Now, just for reference, because I think this is very interesting, I did some research. The average Black Metal Promotions video gets about 10,800 views, and it gets 864 likes. That Drogvale video has got 2,200 likes. There is a raging debate, though, as to whether or not this is AI. Apparently, there's giveaways in the photo of that they use for the album cover, and there's also apparently giveaways in the music. I've got to be honest with you, I've not listened to the music intently enough to be able to make a decision yet. I did run it through two tools that allow you to check to see whether or not it's human or not. Both tools said it's 97% human, or they said there's a 97% chance that it's human. So I don't necessarily think there's evidence to suggest that the music is AI. Whether or not the album cover is AI, I mean, I think there's only three options that's possible here. Number one, either this Drogvale dude, and by the way, his real name is Yevhen Konovalov. He's 23 years old, according to Metal Archives, and he's in another band called Shinagawa Love, which I'm going to play you in a second. That really is fucking atrocious, but we'll get to that. But yeah, either this dude is a marketing genius, because let's be honest, he's managed to somehow get noticed in, probably one of the busiest, most densely trafficked genres in metal, and he really has gotten noticed. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he's already had album deals thrust in front of him. No doubt, old Kunal from Transcending Obscurity sent him a contract on Saturday night after he appeared on the 5th consecutive forum that Kunal frequents. So either he's a marketing genius, or he's a master level troll, and I'm talking like god tier troll, because this album cover is so fucking bad that the only other option could be that this guy should win an award for the least self-aware human being to ever record a black metal record, and that is saying something. Now, given the fact that a lot of you said, when I read comments, because those of you that I'm friends with on Facebook and stuff like that, when I read comments on the forums, most of you said, I'll give it a hard pass, I'm not even going to listen, therefore we're almost definitely going to have to listen. So I'm going to play you one of the Drogvale classics, or not soon to be classics, I should say. The song is called Night Without a Name, and here's what 60 seconds of that goodness sounds like. I will say this. Look, we come across a lot of different music on the news rant, and when it comes to shitty sounding black metal, this is not the worst. We would be completely unfair to say it's the worst. It's the worst of the worst. It sounds to me not necessarily like AI, but it just sounds to me like a young kid making his first black metal album. There's some old school influence there. I think the sound of the guitar is pretty okay. The drums are. I'd be very surprised if they're not programmed. They don't sound dreadful, but they don't sound great. They don't, that doesn't. There's that kind of human feel isn't necessarily there. But it's not the worst song that I've ever heard in my life. What is substantially fucking worse than this is his other band. So let me find that for you. Shinagawa Love. And yeah, we see him without corpse paint. 2 months ago, he released a music video for a song called I Was Never There. This, of course, was far less positively received than the brilliance of the Drogvale record. But give a listen to what this dog shit sounds like. I'm gonna call time on that one as well. If I did dish out a Swirly of the Week award, which I think is potentially going to have to start becoming a permanent fixture on the news rant, he would definitely get it for this song because this is fucking awful. And I would be more inclined to suggest that this is AI than Drogvale. The reason being that opening vocal bit sounds suspiciously like Chino Moreno, and then the chorus sounds very Linkin Park-esque. I.e., well, I like actually don't mind Deftones, but the song just overall is just not. It doesn't cut the mustard. I mean, if both are legit, then I think he's like my read on the situation is this kid probably treats Shinagawa Love like he's serious project. The song didn't necessarily turn him into the megastar that he was hoping that it would, and so he thought, let me do a black metal record for shits and giggles, and that's now gone viral. Either way, mystery fucking solved. Actually, I do have something a little more serious that I want to talk to you guys about. So just wait for 2 seconds while I cue that up. So on last week's episode, or episode 274, the Sinister Minister and I spoke at length about My Dying Bride and about our thoughts on Aaron Stainthorpe not being in My Dying Bride. Third Fish, I suggest from the name because I can't recall him or her having commented on anything that I've done previously, but they wrote a comment on the YouTube video and said, I'll be surprised if Aaron returns to My Dying Bride. Looks like his business partnership with Andy has been dissolved according to Company's House. Aaron seems more busy and happier now, and it would be unfair to write off. But it would be unfair to write off My Dying Bride without him. How many bands have replaced their vocalists? I'm not going to enter into that disagreement again because I've already said my piece. There are some bands that can replace their vocalist. My Dying Bride is not one of those bands. But Third Fish is absolutely correct, and I think this is incredibly telling. Company's House, as you can tell, if you're seeing this on screen, is a UK government website that basically you can put in somebody's name and you can see what companies they are directors of. And the impression I get from looking at it is that a lot of bands based in the UK would enter into a partnership of some sort or some sort of business arrangement to agree or say as a means to split revenue from shows, publishing, merch, etc. Now, when we Google Aaron Stainthorpe if we Google Aaron Stainthorpe and Company's House, we find there's a total number of 2 appointments attached to him. Parasite Productions, Hi Parasite, that was incorporated on the 11th of April 2023. We also find A66A Limited, where he was appointed as a director on the 3rd of March 2015. When we go into it, we see that it was dissolved on the 15th of April 2025. And if we look at the filing history, this is what's interesting. On the 16th of January 2025, an application was lodged to strike A66A or A666A off the company register. If we then open that up, and for some reason it's not showing on the screen, but either way, you're just going to have to trust me on this. We see that it was Andrew David Cragen and Aaron Stainthorpe who both applied or authenticated the form on behalf of the company, the form used to strike the company from the register and ultimately dissolve the partnership. That, my friends, means, from my perspective, that it is the end of the road for Aaron Stainthorpe and My Dying Bride, at least for now. Now, I might be completely wrong. Maybe they've dissolved. Maybe part of the dispute has been around, around the way that the other band members are remunerated. Maybe there's a conversation around creating a new partnership of some sort where people have different shares in the band, etc. But I don't necessarily think that's the case, and it is fucking shit. Makes me very miserable because I really like the band, as you know, and I really like Andrew as well. I don't ever want people to interpret my strong support of Aaron Stainthorpe as, me hating on Andrew. As you know, I've had him on the podcast, have a great deal of respect and a great deal of time for him. I had a fantastic conversation with him. He's a really great guy, a true gentleman, an incredibly gifted musician. And I get that there's going to be a lot of frustration and a lot of annoyance involved in potentially Aaron doing something beside My Dying Bride. But Aaron also has a point. My Dying Bride doesn't perform live. They're not a touring band. Well, they don't perform live often, I should say. They're not a heavy touring band. He has the bandwidth to be able to do another project. And so why shouldn't he? Either way, it is what it is. And if it is what it is, then like I said to Carl at the time, and he and I both agreed on this, a Mortal Binding I regard as the final My Dying Bride record, and what a record to finish up on. A record that genuinely honors the My Dying Bride legacy in every way imaginable, beautifully written, incredible performances from every single person in the band, an incredible album cover. There's just nothing to fault it. And it is, as I said, it is the perfect way to close the chapter on what has been, for me personally, an incredibly influential and important band. I know the same applies to many members of the Legion. But yeah, I could be wrong again. I'm gonna raise that caveat and say there is a possibility that I'm wrong on this. But based on what I'm seeing here, and I want to thank Third Fish for bringing this to my attention. Based on what I'm seeing here, it looks like the commercial agreement has dissolved, and if the commercial agreement has dissolved and there's not a new one that's been created, then I don't necessarily hold out much hope for a reunion. Certainly not in the near future. If Axl Rose and fucking Slash can kiss and make up, then anything is possible. But yeah, it's as I said, it is what it is. Moving on back to some music, as we close out the news rant for this week, Abigail Williams has put out a second single off the forthcoming studio record. Abigail Williams, it says here, previews its upcoming studio album, A Void Within Existence, due out on July the 18th on Agonia Records, with a new single, Still Nights, and an accompanying visualizer video. I enjoyed that last single, wasn't entirely blown away by it. Let's hear what this one sounds like. Now that is way better than the first single. The first single was non-existence, and like I said, decent, but this fucking completely blows that out of the water. This has officially elevated this new record into one that I am now very much looking forward to. Dark, dissonant. I love that little gang vocal that they throw in there. You know, you need to know your shit to be able to pull off a gang vocal in black metal. But yeah, that also, you know what I like about it? It distinctly sounds like a black metal song. It sounds original, but it has a distinctly black metal feel. There's no fucking around. There's no wondering whether or not the person would actually rather want to be in a goth band or in a fucking Catatonia tribute band. It just sounds like dark, malicious, violent, aggressive, hateful black metal, the way good black metal should sound. So top notch from myself. All right, my friends, that brings us to the end of another episode of Into the Necrosphere. I want to say a massive thank you to everybody that has stuck around until the very end of the show. If you are one of those people, you know that you guys have my respect and my gratitude every single week. You know, and as the show continues to grow, hopefully, you know, more of you will stick around until the very end. I also want to say a huge thank you to my guest, Benjamin. What a great guy. So much fun catching up with him face to face. And just to reiterate again, the Great Old Ones absolutely fucking blew the roof off the Scarborough Spa when they played at Fortress Festival. Had a very big crowd when they were playing, and really surprised me. I mean, you know, I think it was interesting having spoken to Benjamin and kind of gotten a sense of his views on, you know, what makes a good frontman. You could tell that was coming through in the way that he was performing on the night. Great band, great dude, great interview. I really hope you guys enjoyed that. I'm back for episode 277 this week, Friday. And my guest is going to be a Brandon Hayter from Obsidian Tongue. So stick around for that one. And then on Tuesday next week, I will have Matt McGeachy of the mighty, the legendary Cryptopsy. That is a conversation you will not want to miss. So 2 episodes coming your way. Probably next week will be the last week that I do 2 episodes in a week. So, you know, enjoy this, you know, enjoy the Tuesday, Wednesday scheduling while it lasts. On that note, my friends, I would like to say to you, the Legion, thank you so much once again for checking out the podcast. Thanks for your support. Whatever it is that you are doing and wherever it is that you are, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you bad motherfuckers again on Friday.